like a merry-go-round that you can...
Hey, that's it, Lonnie, we got to break the train down. Where are we parking it at?
Committee is tomorrow expected to be highly critical of universal credit and the way the Department for Work and Pensions has responded to criticisms of the service.
Up into the ditch.
According to
Across from that location, like he was getting out of the vehicle.
Foundation and given exclusively to Sky News, working families are suffering. 4 million workers are now locked in poverty. That's a rise of
1113 Zarsky, 1113 Zarsky, across the timber of McCardle. 80-year-old male needing a lift assist.
The number of
We're going to fight us at
workers in work
1708.
is growing. The number of workers in poverty is growing faster.
There are all sorts of ways
1928, 27, 425, and 108.
Fundamentally, what we want to see is the government on the front foot. We want to see them investing in the future, the prospects of all those people who are going out to work but aren't able to get a decent living standard from it.
There have been calls to scrap universal credit, although it's likely to undergo further tweaks instead. The full rollout to millions of people is being delayed. The system is simply not ready for so many. Nick Martin, Sky News.
And tomorrow we'll have a special report from Nick Martin on universal credit. That's Inside Universal Credit tomorrow, right through the day on Sky News. Investigation into 10 mail bombs.
529, 527.
President Donald Trump is now focusing on Florida. The FBI confirmed that
28th is going to have that officer just standing by. Can you make sure the yellow part double check it?
To a number of high-profile Democrats and the news organisation CNN early this week. Our US correspondent Hannah Thomas-Peter reports from New York.
At Robert De Niro's Manhattan restaurant, an early morning visit from the bomb squad. A suspicious device taken in a containment vehicle for further investigation. In Delaware, the same thing. 2 suspected pipe bombs in parcels addressed to former Vice President Joe Biden. Over the last few days, others have been posted to prominent Democrats, including the Clintons, Barack Obama, and former CIA Director John Brennan at CNN's offices in New York. All the devices, none of which exploded, have been similar. Plastic pipes filled with shards of glass, all packed into padded envelopes. It's prompted a frantic national manhunt amid fears this is not over.
We continue to advise the American public to remain vigilant, as it does remain possible further packages have been or could be mailed. These devices should be considered dangerous.
As well as the investigation, there is much debate about why this might be happening. Donald Trump's critics say that all of those who've been targeted have also been subjected to personal attacks by the president himself.
Crooked Hillary Clinton. Brennan's a very bad guy. You are fake news. Go ahead.
But the White House has pointed the finger at the media.
You guys continue to focus only on the negative, and that there is a motive. Yesterday, the very first thing that the president did was come out and condemn the violence. The very first thing your network did was come out and accuse the president of being responsible for it. That is not okay. The first thing should have been to condemn the violence.
My call, if you
Whoever
would
is to
please
blame,
get up with
American
Eli.
politics, just days before the midterm elections, is marked by anger, fear, and heated rhetoric. And there is no sign, even amid an attempted bombing campaign, that is going to change. Thomas Peter, Sky News, New York.
Women have won a mini battle for military experience.
About 16 minutes.
They'll now be able to those in special forces, like the SAS and Royal Marines. But not everyone welcomes the idea of women fighting
really going to be a race that is very, very close to call. As we know, Charles, midterms often a judgment on the sitting president.
Of prowess.
This time,
wow, good stuff there. Thank you very much, Deirdre. Meanwhile, the FBI continuing to investigate suspicious packages that
this is a celebration of military
the former
equality.
NYPD commissioner
The announcement that all roles within the UK Armed Forces, including special forces, are now open to women.
Essential because there are options,
Lance
like an
Corporal
injection,
the first females to
a
qualify
once-daily
for ground
overall dose with moderate to severe RA
I would say
prevents
that
the toxin to not regain. Xeljanz XR can reduce pain, swelling, and further joint damage, even without methotrexate. Xeljanz XR can prevent infections, including
Defense Secretary Gavin Williamson made the announcement announcements that ability not just to determine but admitted more women still need to be recruited into senior positions.
Low blood cell counts
We recognise that we need to change and do need to adapt, and we're quite willing to make those changes either through legislation or the way that we work, because we want women and men to succeed.
Until 2016, females were restricted to supportive airborne duties or more defensive roles on the ground.
Will you call me?
I've served on the front line like this for many years, but the final barrier, being able to join the UK Special Forces and do ground close combat roles.
A113.
And while the elite selection process for the SAS and Royal Marines will stay the same for both sexes, some still feel females don't belong.
The reality comes when it's also right for the soldiers who are fighting to stay alive, to live. And we have to look very carefully when experts are telling politicians that sometimes the operational capability and the chances of survival on the battlefield may be affected in certain situations where you have a mix of...
Nevertheless, Brigadier Sharon Nesmith says these changes mark a shift in perception of women in the forces.
I had to sign a piece of paper that said, should I have children, that I would have to leave the army, I would have to parade. You know, it's very different to, here I am, 27 years later, I've done exactly the same as my male contemporaries.
This is clearly an evolving military force, ripping up the old rulebook. Robinson, Sky News, Salisbury Plain.
US President Donald Trump has been briefed by the CIA after weeks of insisting that the journalist Jamal Khashoggi was accidentally killed. Officials in Saudi Arabia have now said his murder was premeditated. This evening,
who's still that bypass is on the computer, if you'll acknowledge it, please.
In Istanbul, where he was killed. Our Foreign Affairs editor Deborah Haynes was there and sent this report.
533 to 583, a medical clinic.
Saudi Arabia. The fake Mohammed bin Salman made to look like he has blood on his hands. At a vigil of friends and supporters of murdered Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi, more than 3 weeks after he stepped through its doors and was brutally murdered.
I guess he's down the way.
President was the first person Mr. Khashoggi's
turned around
called when he disappeared.
The former NYPD Commissioner Howard Safer. What investigators are looking for right now? Sir, thanks for joining us. What leads are they following?
What they're looking for is a lot of Myers, victim Nelson, who was left the area, also going to an address.
On the forensic side, on the investigative side, 18 Saudi officials have been accused of killing, but Mr. Khashoggi's friends think the blame goes much higher, as far as the Crown Prince himself.
This is a law enforcement say as much. A lot of talk now about the focus being on Florida.
833.
Well, I think based on where the return address was to
Prince
the
Mohammed
former
involvement in the
chair,
but pressure is growing on him here in Turkey and among his allies in the West. As Mr. Khashoggi's journalism caused concern for Saudi Arabia's rulers during his life, he's become far more of a threat to them in his death. Deborah Haynes, Sky News in Istanbul.
The folks investigating it said they don't care about political motivations.
Troops to the US border in Mexico to stop thousands of migrants from entering America. His words haven't stopped the migrants.
I think that's right.
The US correspondent
it certainly looks like they're trying to have some influence on the midterm. They're trying to portray the president as the cause of this, and there might be
is already underway. They believe America is still in their sights. And they take any opportunity they can
Catherine Herridge. In
to
fact,
lighten
two sources
the
now
load.
confirming that the postal markings have helped federal investigators refine the focus of the investigation. Florida, as we mentioned, has been described as, quote, a region of interest. They are not saying at this point that they believe that the suspects are in Florida or all the packages were mailed from that state.
Gustavo tells me he's willing to cross illegally into America.
Sir, you got 30 seconds. Your thoughts on this breaking news
says
here?
they're escaping life under a dictator.
Look at that
as they pause by the roadside to ponder their next move, Donald Trump is making his own, vowing to send at least 800 military troops to the border to tackle what he describes as the migrant onslaught.
The 5 starts right
Plenty
now.
of families like Ludens, though, keep pushing on. Says she hopes that God will touch Donald Trump's
Hello,
heart.
I'm Dana Perino along with Pam Bondi, Juan Williams, Jesse Washington.
He is a president who prides himself on taking a hard line on immigration. And these images won't sit well with him.
We're at a checkpoint here, and there are very few police officers present, and this is what we're seeing, just truckloads of people passing through unchecked.
Joe Biden and Robert De Niro. The FBI is
the Mexican government told Sky
any
News that there are still
3,630
people
and Fox
in the
News is now learning authorities
it may be getting smaller,
honing in on the region.
As a national emergency.
Fox News is
Sky News.
And that connects with the of our corporate president.
Hunting
From Florida, which is an indicator that the postal markings on these envelopes are providing key evidence. Today's targets include actor-director Robert De Niro and former Vice President Joe Biden. In fact, Biden had 2 packages addressed to him, and the package addressed to De Niro's Manhattan office was actually delivered yesterday but not identified until early this morning. That brings to 10 the number of devices now intercepted and recovered. None of them exploded, and there are reports that some of the pipe bombs did not have viable detonators. But New York police say all of the devices were treated as live and dangerous, and they said this about the packages sent to New York. Watch.
As to the devices located in New York, which contained a powder, the initial analysis indicates that the powder in those particular envelopes did not present a biological threat.
All 10 of the packages were sent in manila envelopes with 6 American flag stamps, typed address labels, and a return address of Florida Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz, whose name is misspelled. President Trump immediately condemned the attempted attack yesterday, but his critics continue to blame him for ratcheting up the inflammatory rhetoric. Though the GOP has blamed Democrats for inciting violence against Republicans, today, White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders said the idea that any of these attacks were at the hands of the president is, quote, absolutely ridiculous, and that he continues to condemn violence in all forms. Dana.
Thank you, Trace. President Trump reacting to the news at his rally in Wisconsin last night.
My highest duty, as you know, as president, is to keep America safe. Any acts of political violence are an attack on our democracy itself. We want all sides to come together in peace and harmony. The media also has a responsibility to set a civil tone and to stop the endless hostility and constant negative and oftentimes false attacks and stories.
All right, we'll take it around the table. Pam, can we start with you? Just Trace Weber saying that we can confirm now that they're honing in on Florida as a possible place where these packages were sent from. What can you tell us?
Well, without details specifically to Florida, as a career prosecutor, I've seen so many of these cases with suspicious packages, and there is a wealth of information, Dana, in these packages. You wouldn't believe. I mean, even the duct tape. I've had a murder case and got it burnt off the duct tape. Stamps that you used to lick, now we have touch DNA. So if they even touch the stamp, we could get DNA off the stamp. As to the post office, we can even get the origin as to where it came. And I think they're working on all that. You know, was it well planned? Yes and no. Yes, in that they all went out simultaneously. However, no, in that, I mean, names were spelled wrong. Some of the addresses we know were wrong and got returned to sender. Think that would have been on purpose, though? Maybe. But I know that they know a lot more than we know, and that's how it should be right now. And I really have no doubt that they will catch this person, and very fast. I saw the president yesterday at the White House, and he was so somber. You saw him. He was so somber, and very seriously, everyone's taking this. FBI's all over.
Greg, let me go to you then. There's ongoing activity this morning down there?
Scotland may be renowned for its hunting, but today the First Minister Nicola Sturgeon said she would review laws on culling wild animals after an American TV presenter posted pictures of herself with a dead goat. Larissa Switlig has received death threats online, but was defiant, saying those threatening her were ignorant about hunting and conservation. Our Scotland correspondent, James Matthews.
What did you think of the conversation today that was inevitable about President Trump, his tone, him saying that media needs to watch its tone?
Hopefully we can get one to stop.
Well, it is.
She is a self-styled
you're going to get finger pointing.
Huntress.
And I think the thing is, everybody can point their fingers
Users
depending on what group
you
belong to. And so it's natural.
Images that Larissa Switlig posted online from a shooting trip to Isla
because if you were to subtract the heated rhetoric of Trump, let's say the caustic behavior, the jokes about sleepy eyes and lock them up, if you took that all away, right? It's like Trump didn't even exist. You would still have speakers on campus being harassed, Antifa chasing down people on streets.
That sentiment was echoed across social media.
Face-to-face harassment.
Larissa received numerous death threats from people angered by the images posted online.
A lot of this stuff.
Tennis coach Judy Murray called it disgraceful. Comedian Ricky Gervais took issue with the TV star calling
So essentially you've had 2 years of questioning Trump's sanity, calling him Hitler,
their outrage
and you're upset because
this
he
was
made
Isla
a joke
today.
about
We couldn't find any goats amongst the other assorted wildlife. No doubt relieved that Larissa had left the island a month ago. Her visit has reopened the debate about hunting. The Scottish Government has reacted by saying it understands the concern.
I'm sorry, 14,500 or 900?
People like sheep and goats.
Kind of taken aback that the president last night seemed to be more presidential and saying, you know what, we need to unify, we need to come together, you can't attack political opponents. And then this morning, he shifts again, as you were suggesting to Greg.
Is the permission of the owner of the land and of the animals themselves.
And says, hey, you know, the mainstream media needs to
shooting, fishing and stalking. Worth more than £150 million a year to the Scottish economy. Wildlife such as deer is also culled for conservation and land management.
Who was talked about, you know, Second Amendment people taking care of Hillary and body slamming reporters of precedent and go on. I mean, everybody knows this litany.
In Perthshire, I sought the view of the shooting fraternity in the shape of Colin Shedden.
So I think that there's a sense that rarely, you know, his instinct is to be a combative president, and that in fact,
spare the sheep,
as the political strategy approaching the midterms, he sees the division as firing up his base. And he's worried that you can't keep, we can't, as an American people, keep going down this path without respecting
left Isla for our next adventure. Larissa Switlig says she's disconnecting from social media to get away from what she calls ignorant people.
So we actually agree on something.
Hardcore huntress chasing the softest
the conversation that we could have about rhetoric could have happened without these suspicious
James Matthews, Sky News.
That's true. It's been boiling up for a long time. And just talking about tone, as Juan brought up, look at our table.
Sky Sports News for an update.
We make fun of Crooked Hillary, and we say Pocahontas, and we make fun of Spartacus, and we...
That's just you.
This sports bulletin is brought to you by Vitality for life insurance that rewards healthy living.
But I don't think anybody at this table says, you know, this person is a Nazi. This person hates other ethnic groups. I want to see this
made to wait. Formula One's
pretty responsible at that table. Remember when Steve
Jose loses his cool. Manchester United manager Jose Mourinho involved in a touchline spat and his return to Chelsea.
And Bernie Sanders himself never accepted
new number one, Brooks Koepka becomes golf's world leader after victory at the CJ Cup.
Democratic rhetoric. And Greg
also, we'll hear from Zlatan Ibrahimovic on Life at LA Galaxy, and
people have tried to be stabbed.
We'll tell you about the Olympic legend scoring it today.
Has been sent around. And you look at people like Kathy Griffin or Snoop Dogg or Hillary Clinton the other day.
And Lewis Hamilton will have to wait a little longer to win a fifth Formula One world title. Hamilton's Mercedes started the US Grand Prix on pole, but was overtaken by Ferrari's Kimi Raikkonen before the first corner. He went on to finish third, with Raikkonen winning the race. Title rival Sebastian Vettel finished fourth. The title was not decided. Hamilton will win the title if he finishes top seven.
And I don't think he has the responsibility to do that. I agree.
It was epic. It was actually really exciting. I really enjoyed the race. Not where I wanted to finish, but I really enjoyed the race, and getting to be in a battle with these cars, with these guys was awesome. It's actually what I dream of. I think people watching TV want to see that more often, but the way these cars are designed, even though they're great on their own, we should be able to follow closer than we are and be in the train and be dicing between each other, but you don't see that anymore in this series because the tyres weren't too happy today. And also with the aero difference that you need per track. We've got to go better with the design for 2021 that you don't need a second advantage to follow or to get close to another car. So it's usually a second and a half or something like that. So if they can design something in the wind tunnel, which I'm sure they can, that means you only need 3/10.
Why bother mastering something? Because when you want to create an entire
3/10 loss when you're behind a car, then you're going to see some great racing.
Mastery is all the difference in the world.
Football, the Premier League returned, and it's a case of as you were at the top of the table. Champions Manchester City thrashed Burnley 5-0. Sergio Aguero opened the scoring at the Etihad. Bernardo Silva, Fernandinho, Riyad Mahrez and Leroy Sané were also on target. Liverpool are level on points with City at the top, but behind in goal difference. Mohamed Salah's first goal in 5 games sealed a 1-0 win over struggling Huddersfield. Chelsea's Ross Barkley scored an injury-time equaliser to deny Manchester United and Jose Mourinho victory at Stamford Bridge. Chelsea assistant Marco Ianni ran across Mourinho while celebrating, angering the United manager who got involved in scuffles on the sidelines and in the tunnel. Ianni later apologised.
Bad education, but I also made mistakes.
For life insurance that rewards healthy living, Vitality.
Coming up next, we've got the press preview for you, where we take a look at the morning papers, including this on the front of the Times. MPs call for Green to be stripped of knighthood, the headline there. We'll explain all of that very shortly and look at all the front pages with the Observer's chief leader writer, Sonia Soda, and the deputy editor of Spiked Online, Tom Sless. That's coming up next.
Bill.
128, the case number is going to be 1281.
I'm 350.
Are you or a loved one between the ages of 50 to 80 years old? If you are younger than 80 years old, do you receive Social Security, Disability, or Medicare? If you answered yes, you may qualify for $30,000 in funeral insurance for only pennies a day. The average funeral costs around $11,000, and Social Security only pays $255, leaving your loved ones to pay the balance. Call now to see if you qualify for $30,000 in funeral expense coverage from Senior Legacy Life. Your will never increase. Your benefits will never decrease, and there is no medical exam, even if you have a pre-existing disease or illness. Don't be a financial burden to your family. Right now, will you qualify for funeral insurance up to $30,000 for only pennies a day?
Call 1-800-500-2922 to speak with a licensed insurance agent. That's 1-800-500-2922. 1-800-500-2922.
161, Kathy for about...
All in for Republicans, the home stretch of the midterms. He's planning on hitting the campaign trail for at least 10 more rallies in the last 6 days before the election. In Trump's grand finale, the president is reminding voters what this election is all about.
This will be the election of the caravans, Kavanaugh, law and order, tax cuts, and common sense.
So Dana, because he's holding all yesterday, and he was very somber, of course, at the ceremony on opioids, and then the man's going non-stop. He's
going to do 2 a day.
Feet on.
2 a day.
Right.
speed on practice. It's crazy. He's working so hard. Will his laser-like focus make a difference in these midterms?
Well, it was the strategy that worked for him in 2016, right? Flood the zone, just be out there all the time. A lot of sports metaphors. You like it? You like it?
I don't know. I don't like this kind of Dana. Bring back the dog Dana.
Okay, well,
he's like a big, fluffy, excitable dog who's out there
all the time. Look, it's really close out there. Like, one moment you can think, wow, the Republicans could hold on to this thing. The next thing you think, whoa, maybe not. Because there's so much enthusiasm. There hasn't been this much enthusiasm since 1966. What was happening in 1966? Well, the country was having a big debate about expanding the war in Vietnam. So this is like we've been having.
Sky News, just a moment, the press preview. Our first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. First, though, our top stories here tonight.
Look, it's good to have everybody
Topshop owner Philip Green says he categorically denies allegations of unlawful sexual and racial misconduct. He's been named as the man who tried to prevent the Daily Telegraph from publishing details.
Just for comparison,
Universal
in
Credit
2006,
Centre agent has told
majority.
Sky News that staff were encouraged to use a deflection script
There's no doubt
in order to
Republicans
get
are getting
claimants
crushed by
off the phone
retirement.
as quickly as
44
possible.
this year. In 2006,
And the
only
investigation
17.
into
But I would
10
also
mail
point
bombs
this out.
sent to prominent
Given
critics
at
of
this rate,
US President Donald Trump is now
how
focusing
close
on
it's going to be
Florida.
in the House, even if the Democrats take over, they can watch. I don't think Pelosi can become
You're
speaker.
watching the press
There's
preview.
too many
Over the next half an
Democrats
hour,
who
we're
have
going to be
pledged already
talking through
not
the
to run
headlines with the Observer's
election,
chief
so we
lead
could have
writer
some
Sonia
really
Soda
big
and the
sort of
deputy editor
leadership
of Spiked
vacuums
Online,
that are coming
Tom
up because
Slater.
Speaker
Hello,
Ryan
both
is
of you.
leaving. You're going to have a fight
So
on the
let's take a look
Republican
then
side.
at the front pages of
if you
tomorrow's
think it's going to be
newspapers.
over
And
on
following
November
Lord
6th,
Haynes' speech
it's
in the
going to
House
keep
of
going either
Lords,
way.
naming Sir
Either way.
Philip Green as the
Juan,
man
it'll be an
who tried
overtime.
to stop the Daily
good job.
Telegraph from reporting
Juan, will they be able to get it over the
allegations of sexual
goalpost?
harassment and racist behaviour.
The blue way.
The paper leads with
this
that very
blue way
story.
we keep hearing
Sir
about.
Philip
I
strongly
feel like
denies
it's turning
any
into like a
such
little
conduct.
pond that's starting to dry up.
The Financial
What do you
Times
feel
calls
about
him the
that?
highest
It
profile
sounds like
Britain
if you look at the
embroiled in
numbers,
the
it's
global
definitely
backlash
possible
against
now that
sexual harassment.
Republicans, as Dana was saying,
Metro
remain
reports
within
that Lord
range. I don't know
Hayne
that
felt
you
he
would
had
say
a
that
public duty
it's the
to
case that,
reveal
oh, you think
Philip
Republicans
Green's
now will
identity
retain, but it's
using
just not as
parliamentary
large,
privilege.
Pam, as people had been
The
previously
Guardian's
saying.
headline
So I think that
focuses
there's a
on
lot
Sir
of
Philip
sense
Green's denial
among
of
people
the
that the
allegations.
dynamic has shifted.
The
One,
Express
since
says the
Kavanaugh
Topshop
drove
owner
up
was
the
named and
enthusiasm on the
shamed,
Republican
as
side.
does the
But I
Daily
must
Mail.
remind you that the Democratic
MPs, according
enthusiasm
to
is
Philip Green,
extremely
to
high.
be
So it just was, it
stripped
came
of
up to
his
match.
knighted, according to the
The key thing here, I think, is
Route 58, I'm on a courtesy 10-7 at Port and Charleston.
President Trump. It's hard to get away from it. What we see in the poll numbers is people saying they're voting to oppose Trump, they want to check on Trump, or they're voting to support Trump. There's people who are voting for the check right now way outnumber the people who are voting to support Trump, but not in his base. And the second point I'd make is you look at where Trump is going. Several stories today indicate that he's going to places not Swedish, but outside the big cities where the House is going to be determined. But oftentimes going to rural areas in states where his base is located,
while we look
and
at
that
the
has some
Telegraph and
effect.
its coverage. 2 days ago, this newspaper, of course, was
Republicans
said,
say, you know what,
story
Trump's
saying it
already
be
focused on
prevented
2020.
from publishing
And
allegations
this is
against the
really,
businessman
so
by an
the midterms are
injunction.
about Trump, and of course
Today,
2020
we've
will be
seen
about
Lord
Trump.
Haynes
Well,
standing up
Jesse,
in the House
Juan
of
made a good
Lords.
point about
Using
getting away
parliamentary
from the caravans.
privilege
They've stopped talking, their radio
Sir
silent
Philip
on the
Green,
caravans now, and now
saying
they're
that he
moving
was
on
the
to
man at
health
the
care.
centre
What Juan
of
said.
the
Do you think
allegations.
that'll
And
be
before we
enough
get
to help
cracking on
them?
this, we should
No, I
say
think they need a little
that
help.
there has been a statement from Sir Philip Green
generic
saying that he's not
congressional ballot's
commenting
not
on
gonna cut
anything
it
that's happened in
historically.
court.
Trump's a
All was said
closer.
in Parliament
He closed
today,
on Cruz, he
and he
closed
said
on
that has been guilty of unlawful sexual behaviour and categorically
right in front of the 600 building. He's on the public sidewalk.
to set things
But he was told to get off the property.
It's a very big deal. They are now
He just told me that.
But remember the midterms, he just got shellacked. Now, this is going to be a big test
So this is sort of the kind of bizarre nature of the situation in which is
headwinds because his party usually loses in a situation like this. But despite the historic headwinds, he's got a lot going for him. He's got the hot economy, he's got a fired up base,
there's still the injunction in place.
The caravan's playing right into his
There's still an
hands.
injunction from the Court of Appeal which
October
says
surprise we thought was going to be Mueller. And Mueller has said, you know what, it's probably going to come after November. Now this mail bombing scenario is the October surprise, and that could go either way. I just know Speaker Pelosi, if she does become Speaker, you're talking Trump tax returns, impeaching Kavanaugh, and they're going to go all, they're going to reopen the Trump-Russia investigation. It's going to be scary. And do you agree, Greg, that that's not going to help?
to name the subject of injunctions and say a lot of
this?
I
don't think it's going to help Pelosi. What about you?
All right, I think Trump's not competing against the Democrats. He's competing against the news, right? Whenever there's a space, he can fill it. And when there's a big story, then it kind of gets pushed aside. The Democrats don't. Their message right now is working for them, which is we're not that guy. That's all they got. We're not that guy. I believe competition helps, so I would like to see a good Democratic Party that would help create an improvement in the Republican Party and Trump. So I have the message for 2020, but I don't know if I can share it. All right. I believe that they have to stress unity because they have to liberalize Trump's message, right? Trump's message was make America great again. It's about patriotism. If the Democrats could just reshape that, because they've created so many rifts between gender, race, sexuality, sports fans, entertainment choices. There's division. So what they could do, the idea of America as a family, right? That all different kinds of families. Families could be any kind of family, but we're all in this together.
I think it is not a situation to be in this day and age, but I wouldn't put
that would be basically taking Trump's vision and moving it a step further. If they actually believed in that, they would do two things. They separate themselves from identity politics, which people are tired of, and two, they have a winning message.
You know, I'm just limit free discussion of important stories. I really don't think it should fall to a Lord or a member of Parliament to stand up and, by dint of their special privileges, be able to talk about things that otherwise we should all be discussing. I think that's one of the things to come out about this, which is the role that injunctions play in really limiting press freedom in terms of these
when you move in, guys, you could help with
some of our discussion tonight is about those restrictions rather than the story itself.
That's right, we're very limited in what we can say. So let's move on to the Guardian's front page while we talk about those non-disclosure agreements. So there's their headline, Philip Green, I'm not guilty of unlawful sexual racist behaviour. So you talked about non-disclosure agreements. Even Theresa May yesterday touched on the subject in the House of Commons, not talking specifically about this case because she can't talk specifically about this case, but did raise some questions about them, saying that it was important that they weren't used ever to silence whistleblowers. I mean, to what extent is there concern, do you think, about the way that sometimes these agreements are used?
I think there's a lot of concern about it. I mean, you see that in the fact that the Prime Minister brought it up in the House of Commons, but it's not even just the Prime Minister, it's MPs on both sides of the House. So Jess Phillips, a Labour MP, has spoken out about this. Maria Miller, who's the chair of the Women and Equalities Select Committee. And I think the concern about them stems from this fact that there is, you know, they were originally sort of designed as legal agreements to stop people taking trade secrets when they left a particular company to go and work for a competitor. But what's really emerged is that they are being used by very rich, wealthy, powerful people, often men, to prevent people who allege abuse or harassment against them from ever speaking out in public about it. And I think the concern is that if you're able to afford these very, very specialist, highly paid lawyers, it's not an even balance of power, is it? If, in somebody who has been subject to harassment or abuse or bullying in the workplace for a very long period of time, may feel they've got no choice other than to sign an agreement. So I think that is where the concern comes from, and I think there certainly will be big picture questions about these agreements asked going forward, which is not to say that they are never a legitimate device, but that actually, if very powerful people are using them to silence people that they've oppressed, that is really quite concerning.
Well, yes, and many people, many employers might say, well, these people that we're asking to sign them are adults. It's up to them whether or not they do sign them. But originally they were used, weren't they, to kind of protect commercial secrets perhaps when someone was leaving to go to another company, for example.
Exactly, and I think on that point, which is why no one's rushing to say that these should be banned outright, no one's suggesting that the whole idea of it would never have any place. But I think what the concern is that these NDAs are being used increasingly for these specific types of cases. And as you say, there might be a case that, you know, between consenting adults, these things should be agreed. But again, back in March, actually, the Solicitors Regulatory Authority raised the alarm about this because they were seeing increasingly NDAs being used to cover up not just, again, things that people might not want to get out, but actually to the point in which people were scared about going to the authorities with allegations that were criminal in nature. And I think when you get into a situation in which by dint of how much money you've got, you can effectively bypass the legal system in that sense, that's not just for anyone.
I think that's right, and it can cost hundreds of thousands of pounds to afford these things, so there's something that's available to the very rich and wealthy and no one else.
OK, well, let's move on. But as we say, the paper's all going with the fact that Lord Hayne has mentioned this name, and some of them going with Philip Green's denials there, like the Guardian, for example. But let's move on to other stories. On the front of the Telegraph, a story that may have had more prominence on another day, and this is the continuing investigation into the mail bomb scare, is how the Telegraph puts it, and Donald Trump's response to it in America.
No, definitely. So this is the story that's been unfolding to a lot of horror, I think, in the US. It's really the leading story everywhere in America right now, as much as you can tell. There have been this series of mail bombs, pipe bombs, suspicious powders being sent to various people who, frankly, are all vocal critics of Donald Trump. So it ranges from Robert De Niro, who was mentioned here, former Vice President Joe Biden, Barack Obama, the former Hillary Clinton, former CIA Director John Brennan. It was sent to CNN mistakenly because it was actually a contributor at MSNBC. But
President Trump telling the massive caravan
and it's really
north
tapped into this discussion, particularly because Trump responded to it first, trying to strike quite a presidential conciliatory tone, trying to bring everyone together, but then not being able to resist the opportunity to have a pop at the media for potentially stirring this up. It has created this whole discussion about how much the heightened rhetoric in America has potentially created a situation in which more of these things might happen. That, I think, is a danger field to go down as far as we end up stripping the people responsible of responsibility for these things, but that's definitely how the debate is.
And of course, it's early in investigations, and we don't know who's behind it or what their motives are, but it has prompted a discussion, hasn't it, about the level of debate.
Absolutely, and I mean, we've got to think about responsibility here. I mean, Trump seems to be saying, well, you know, these media organisations, some of which have been targeted, are responsible, which is an absolutely shocking thing for a president to be saying in these circumstances. And I think there are very, very serious questions to be asked. We've seen a hugely heightened debate. Some people would say on both sides, I would say particularly focused on Democrats and his followers. You know, President Trump has been a long-time attacker of the press, calling journalists enemies of the people, saying good things about Republican politicians.
I think it is fair when any time a person brings up kind of a logical argument about the consequences of waving a caravan through there.
And I think
they are called bigots
or
xenophobic or racist. So that way, by scaring people and not actually saying the logical consequences, I do think that helps. The troops, though, are telling you something very clear. This is not happening. The caravan is destined to fail. So those feeding this spectacle with cameras and emotional testimony, they're not helping anybody. You're not. You think you care, but you're actually driving a caravan that's expanding and multiplying. Because essentially you're saying, keep going. They're going to need an army. It's not going to happen. And I feel, and this is, for the Democrats, this is what happens when your ideas are brought to a logical conclusion, complete with
both sides. I mean, if you think about the way that Donald Trump and his ascendancy has been talked about, he's been casually compared to kind of fascistic dictators constantly puffed up, a threat to all that is moral and decent. It's not saying I'm in favour of them. But nevertheless, you could easily make an argument on the other side, which I wouldn't support, which is to say that that has also contributed to the climate. For instance, Steve Scalise, Republican congressman, was shot by a Bernie Sanders supporter last year. Now, in that case, I don't think it's appropriate at all to suggest that, again, progressive liberal rhetoric in the US is responsible. Similarly, I don't think we should do that.
I don't know if there's been any other reports like that. I asked the operator, I reminded the operator that weapons weren't allowed. I know we have a policy about the gun, but I know that
residents on Mexico's Pacific coast have begun clearing up the wreckage left by Hurricane Willa. The storm ripped through the town overnight, tearing off rooftops, downing power lines and splitting trees apart. Willa hit the northwestern state of Sinaloa late on Tuesday. It is one of the strongest storms to lash the coast in recent years, with winds of up to 120 miles per hour.
Well, I think Republicans want to vote. I think it's the #1 issue for Republicans, not for Democrats. In some states, what do you mean by that?
Indonesia's second largest city has come up with a novel way to encourage its residents to recycle waste, giving free bus rides in exchange for used plastic bottles. Under the scheme launched by Surabaya in April, commuters can ride red city buses by dropping off plastic bottles at terminals or directly paying with ferry bottles. A 2-hour bus ticket costs 10 plastic cups or up to 5 plastic bottles, depending on their size. which the city hopes will help it meet an ambitious target of becoming free of plastic by 2020. City data shows that 15%, or nearly 400 tons, of certain biospheric waste is plastic.
People without borders. This is not a local group. This is
the Philippines has reopened its top tourist lure, the island of Boracay. The beauty spot has been closed for 6 months whilst an intensive cleanup to overhaul its overwhelmed road, waste and water systems has been going on. The new and cleaner Boracay will now have stricter rules to try and maintain high environmental standards according to the Tourism Secretary. Tourists will have to say goodbye to beach parties and water sports when the white sand resort reopens. Drinking and smoking in public places will be banned, along with late-night parties. The number of visitors will be capped at 6,405 arrivals a day, and only 19,000 tourists will be allowed there at any one time.
Well, it was causing him such political problems that he had to go deal with...
A Chinese entrepreneur is reviving old ways of watchmaking and hopes to tap into growing demand for niche handmade goods from China's young, affluent consumers. Taiwan once started his business selling handmade iron versions of the famous round-bottom cooking pan 3 years ago near his home village in the centre of Hubei province. He was inspired during a visit to a Japanese art workshop in Beijing, where he saw gifts made from traditional ironwork that were popular with young Chinese buyers.
Feeding them a line if they think they're going to get into our country, because they're not. So I hope they've gone home. Let me tell you from a prosecutor's point of view, Juan, the last case I was working on before I ran for Attorney General, the last case, it was a car carrier from Mexico coming into our country, and in the pipes that carried the cars, resistant to drug stuffed full of kilos of cocaine and assault rifles from Mexico, and we stopped it in Florida. That's why we have to protect our borders.
Hey, you can't go there. Hey.
He has a right to migrate.
I do have a
right to migrate. White line fever. All right, but you know what I can't stand is all the phony stuff online. That, it seems to me, makes the caravan out to be like an army approaching. I just don't think that's real.
I think the visuals tell the story.
You know what the AP said, Juan? They called it a ragtag army of the poor.
Yeah.
That was the AP that
that's the poor is the operable word there. You like that better. All right.
The AP did.
Jesse wins. Brown University taking on so-called toxic masculinity with a new course. And we've got the man to give you the details.
Amazing, isn't it? No, but we are going to sneak it in now. Page 2 of The Sun that you've picked out, and it says plan belated and be belated.
Yeah, so this is the story that effectively
if you're waiting patiently for a liver transplant,
over Brexit, trying to break
it
through
could
the
cost you
impasse
your liver. It's time to get out of the UPMC does more living donor liver transplants than any other centre in the nation.
That they could possibly support to then take it to Brussels to see if that has been delayed. So basically raised the question of whether on this
That's no ordinary family. That's your family, which is why you didn't craft just any cheese. You picked up new Kraft expertly paired cheddar and Swiss for eggs.
Deal preparation, etc. And I think really underscores the fact that the backstop question, complicated as it is, this issue of what happens with the Irish border once we leave the European Union, how can we ensure that that border is frictionless after we leave.
Cargo Loops. Find great deals from top-rated dealers near you.
Because on the one hand, the European Union who only want it to be effectively annexed into the European Union at the end of the transition period.
wanted to help protect myself.
The UK said that
My
can't
doctor recommended Eliquis.
But Brussels rejecting that, and it
Eliquis is proven to treat and help prevent another DVT or PE blood clot.
And obviously,
almost 98% of patients on Eliquis didn't experience an outcome, and Eliquis has significantly less major bleeding than a standard treatment. Eliquis is FDA approved and has both.
Don't stop Eliquis unless your doctor tells you to. Eliquis can cause serious and, in rare cases, fatal bleeding. Don't take Eliquis if you have an artificial heart valve or abnormal bleeding.
So we can talk about it many times again.
Call your doctor right away
Okay, let's move to the double page spread in the Times. They was world double page spread.
It may take longer than usual for bleeding to stop. Seek immediate medical care for certain signs of bleeding, like unusual bruising. Eliquis may increase your bleeding risk if you take certain medicines. Tell your doctor about all planned medical or dental procedures.
It's around the corner. It could be
now got the
surprising.
Saudis saying, yes, it was murder, it wasn't.
My name is Oleg.
it's hot.
And I've used thumbtack for
we're
so
going
many
to
different things.
investigate it. It really, in some ways, I mean, they were always going to have to end up somewhere close to this.
I got my carpet
get close to
I hired a cool guy.
because, I mean, just the
remodeled my
evidence,
entire
really. I
kitchen.
mean, you can't
I can hire
sort of
pretty much
claim
anyone
that
on
this was
thumbtack.
some sort of,
It finds me local pros for free. See their prices on the reviews. Even chat with pros right in the app.
So it's going to be
Download the app or go to thumbtack.com today.
Ramifications of this.
You don't always use your smartphone for directions.
It does lead to a reset
or
of the
to laugh out loud.
UK and Saudi Arabia. There's been, lots of
but when it
criticism
matters
about
most, you count on TrackPhone to keep you connected for less.
Given its track record in Yemen, where it's been partly responsible for the biggest humanitarian disaster.
Our smartphone plan gives you talk, text, and data with unlimited carryover starting at $15 a month. No contract, all with nationwide 4G LTE coverage. It's not smartphones, but bring your own. TrackPhone, for moments that matter.
Allegations and talks about the story not being credible, but there's no sign of any shift in policy.
You know what else is smart?
No, certainly not, because of course
growing
not
global demand
the West, so a hell of a lot
miss
of
out.
to Saudi
Buy my
Arabia.
silver.
That was obviously a lot of kind
Buying
of
silver has been an
geopolitical
important way to
interest bound up
accumulate
in
wealth
that in
for
relation to keeping
thousands of
Iran at
years.
bay, etc.
And a
But I
great
think
way
what
to
the
start
Khashoggi
investing.
case has really kind of
There are
underlined
silver
is just
coins,
how
silver bars,
morally
and even
untenable all
pullback
of that
silver.
relationship
And
is.
Roslyn has them
And
all.
also, it's just you
And
get
with
into this
Roslyn,
bizarre
you're
situation
always
which you have
guaranteed the best
very
prices,
important
fastest
Western
shipping,
statesmen
and
having
best
to
customer
effectively
service around.
echo, or
I
at least
like
not
that.
challenge,
You would
ridiculous
too.
positions
When
coming
it
out
comes
of
to
Riyadh.
buying
First
gold
of all,
or
we were
silver,
talking about that it was
or
some sort of brawl
Roslyn
that got out of hand. Now they're actually
Call
taking
now
some
for your free
responsibility
gold,
for
silver,
it.
and
Increasingly, it feels like this line
and for a
that
limited
is
time,
effectively
Roslyn
just
is offering a
elements within the
$1,000
kind of,
discount free to
Saudi
qualifying new
officialdom who just
customers.
took it upon
Call
themselves to do what seems to be the thing that it feels like that would be scapegoated rather than actually taking the real issue of the crown prince's.
Let's have a quick look at the Times page one because it links in. This is the Duke of York saying eager to work closely with Saudi Arabia. Let's quickly touch on that.
Yeah, that's right. So just as we're having this conversation about how this must lead to a reset of UK relations,
forget the great achievements that took risk on the part of men and even resulted in their deaths.
No sense of timing on his part,
violent,
really.
sex-bad
He was speaking
and so Brown
an
University
address to young
offers a
people
course aimed
to
at
promote the
unlearning
success of his
toxic
entrepreneurship scheme
We used to call these basket
in the Middle
weaving.
East.
If you're willing to give Brown 50 grand for this crap, you need to unlearn common sense too. Besides, it makes no sense.
Okay,
I mean,
let's
if men are
finally
so
move on
toxic,
to page
why would you
3
want
of
them
the Mail
detoxing
now,
on your
because
campus?
this is
My prediction,
extraordinary
unlearning
photographs
toxic masculinity
on
will
this
soon be
page,
replacing
which
Western
makes you
sin.
feel dizzy just
After all,
looking
there's
at
no
them.
question men
They
are
call
more
it the day
aggressive than women.
Spider-Man
It's
conquered
science.
Pacific.
Yes,
And it
that's
doesn't
right.
hurt
So it's
to
a man who
civilize
calls himself
unruly
French
cats. It's what
Spider-Man,
dads and moms
makes it
used to
his
do
business to
before we
climb
decided
without
they
harnesses.
sucked.
He's climbed
And men do
160
live shorter
skyscrapers
lives.
around the
Just look at
world,
me.
totally like freewheeling.
Because of the risk
He's climbed the tallest building in the world in
But if you believe this is about
Dubai.
appreciating
This is
men
him
while
climbing
turning away the
the
rough
Heron
parts, kid
Tower
yourself. This is
in the
pure class
city.
hatred
I mean,
based on
it's just
stereotypes meant to
incredible,
demean a group of
but there
people.
is
Branding of a
there is
gender
I mean, no
by
harnesses,
angry,
and
bitter
it's just
radicals.
crazy.
It's also
But there is a
sexist.
serious note
You
to
don't
the
believe
story.
me? Just create your own class.
Yeah, there's a serious note. I can say
unlearning toxic femininity.
The risk
How
to
long do you
his
think
own
that'll
life
last?
that he's taken.
Well, then again, maybe it's in the works already, designed to focus on those horrible,
they have to have
toxic
ambulance
stay-at-home moms
services
who voted for
waiting,
Trump.
fire services. So there's
All right, Dana, let's say you're
British
at Brown, which I believe is a university.
as well. And I think the message in this article is don't try this at home. Very much so.
Absolutely not. I mean,
yeah.
but it's rather
you know,
amazing,
we do
isn't
these
it, as
stories
well,
about
kind of pushing
remember
the
dating
human
tips?
endeavour and
dating
pushing
tips.
ourselves to
nowhere
limits.
on
I
any
think that's
dating
exactly
tip.
right. As long as it's someone else, I think that's exactly right.
Yeah,
Because we could kind of
Also,
naysay
I
about
think
how
a better
much trouble it might
test
cause
would
in
be
the
for
city
men
and
from
traffic
Brown
and pulling out
to
the
have to
emergency
go work on
services.
a
I think
ranch.
even though none of us might want to do this,
For
it's nice to
for
know
like
there
a
are people
month.
out there who just have that little bit of risk aversion, have that little bit of sense
They
of
would take you
adventure.
though
I
at
think
home,
it's
back
something
home.
quite human.
I could use ranches.
They would love to have you come
we
visit.
will leave it.
And
Not sure that's
badly
a healthy
want.
level.
Are you filled with toxic masculinity? Are you a
Do you
toxic
feel you
male?
need the class?
From a fresh coastal breeze
Actually, Pam, I think I could use the class because
to
it seems
watching
to
the
me,
sunset
you know,
on the
the male
Australian
needs to be
outback.
dominant, and the way that we look at sex and the
But it's all
interaction.
change on Friday, and northerly
some
winds
things
will
that puzzle
bring
me
colder conditions and some winter showers. It's going to be a chilly and showery start for many, but Some of it will be quite mild, with some patchy rain extending from Cornwall to Walsh. And that rain will clear the south during the morning, leaving a mixture of sunshine and heavy showers for most, and there'll be hail and thunder.
It just was puzzling to me. And then I heard from other people, oh no, that's not unusual. And I'm like, that's nuts. And then my niece is a prosecutor in D.C., and she tells me people come from some countries, and they'll say, oh yeah, that's the way men act. men hit women. I'm like, what? Where is that from?
I don't know.
Is that a
OJ.
What charge do you got in charge out here at Buck Stadium?
I think they do. You do? I don't know.
I think he's just calling.
I think you should go survey the class, Jesse.
Yeah, well, I have a very low respect for the last time I was shooting a movie there, a guy with a skirt chased me around and heckled me. They hate me up there. It's because I'm so toxic. I think that's really what it is. But I agree with Dana. I've always been under the assumption that women are attracted to men that are manly, that make a lot of money, that work with their hands, that scoop you up their feet, that hold the door for you, take care of you, don't cry, never show their feelings. Dana, speak up.
Pam, do you think this feels like a re-education camp for the evil male to me? I don't know.
Well, as an employer or as a grad school, can you imagine looking on transcripts, seeing unleashing toxic masculinity? What grade did you get? If you didn't get an A, you're going to be in big trouble taking that class. First of all, this needs to be learned, obviously, in the home.
Right.
If you're in college and you still have these issues, you should.
And by the way, the issues are, they just don't like me.
Background, don't you think that guys sign up for this class thinking that they're going to get a date?
Yes!
Okay? And they might get a date.
But do you want to date a woman who's interested in taking the toxic masculinity?
You want to date any woman in college?
Yes,
You'll take any course.
And women at Brown probably want them to take that class, and then they can talk about it and things like that. But I don't think it'll.
I don't think so either. But this is now the new thing is to call it toxic.
Yeah.
That's like if you said this about women, your toxic femininity, you would probably be fired.
You should write that article tomorrow.
Really?
Toxic femininity. I think it would be great.
What would be the symptoms, Dana, of toxic femininity?
Oh, we talk about them all the time.
Do we?
Okay.
Oh, really?
Tease.
Yes. Tease now. All right. An absurd new fashion trend and much more up next in Fast the 7.
Hey, whenever we went to the call earlier, the guys
When my hot water heater failed, she was pregnant, in-laws were coming, a little bit of water, it rocked our world.
I had no idea the amount of damage that water could do.
We called USAA, and they greeted me as they always do. Sergeant Baker, how are you? They were on it. It was unbelievable. Having insurance is something everyone needs, but having USAA, that's a privilege. We're the Bakers, and we're USAA members for life.
USAA. Get your insurance quote today.
2960, being route to Shoreline Adult Mill.
Dear Foremothers, your society was led by a woman who governed thousands, commanded armies, yielded to no one. When I found you in my DNA, I learned where my strength comes from. My name is Courtney McKinney, and this is my Ancestry DNA story.
Now, with 2 times more geographic detail than other DNA tests, order your kit at AncestryDNA.com.
Tonight, prepping for the caravans.